Hello and welcome to another edition of As the Blade Turns. I'm Dave Leese, and this is your daily Kamila Valieva update. If you are new here, please subscribe below and remember to smash that like button because there are surely going to be tons and tons of hateful comments below. I wanted to give an update about what we know, what is happening in the case of Kamila Valieva, Rusada, CAS, and everything that's been transpiring since we took place last night when we were filming this and that. And the situation at large. These are the latest updates. I will start with a general article and then go piece by piece with what is happening around the world. This is a Reuters article, Beijing. The headline is Teen Skater's Doping Test Draws Global Wrath Against Russia. February 11th, Russian skating prodigy Kamila Valieva failed a drug test prior to her dazzling Winter Games team gold threw the 15-year-old's Olympic future into doubt and reawakened global anger over Moscow's doping history on Friday. But the Kremlin, already facing Western diplomatic wrath over a troop buildup near Ukraine, was also defiant in the sporting terrain, calling Valieva's case a misunderstanding. Hold your head up, you're a Russian, government spokesperson Dmitry Peskov and husband of Tatiana Navka urged her. Go proudly and beat everyone. The teenager became the first woman to land a quadruple jump at the Olympics on Monday, winning a team figure skating gold with the Russian Olympic Committee ROC. However, the International Testing Agency ITA said she had tested positive for banned heart drug trimetazidine in a urine sample collected by Russian authorities back on December 25th, though confirmation of that only came this week. Valieva is due to compete again on Tuesday in the women's individual event. By then, the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, should have ruled on her case from a closed boardroom on the second floor of a Beijing hotel. She is one of the youngest Olympians ever to test positive. Many fans and fellow athletes were furious at how Valieva came to have a prohibited drug in her system, blaming coaches, medics, and authorities rather than her. It's a shame, and the responsible adults should be banned from the sport forever, said German figure skating great Katharina Witt. What they knowingly did to her, if true, cannot be surpassed in inhumanity and makes my athlete's heart cry infinitely. Former U.S. figure skater Adam Rappan, who was in Beijing as a coach, summed up Valieva's plight by saying, "This entire situation is heartbreaking. She is a minor. The adults around her have completely failed her. They've put her in this awful situation and should be punished." I just wanted to stop here for one moment. Adam is absolutely right, and one of the interesting things is that today her coaches didn't walk through the mix zone with her. No one accompanied her, even though she is an athlete who is in a very terrible situation, and a minor athlete at that. But they did have Valieva put her hood over her head. Now, this was major optics. It shows how she is obviously being beleaguered by criticism, by attention around the world in a negative sense, but there was no one there actually protecting her. And it really showed to me just how alone she is in this situation. Even though, Dmitry Peskov is saying things to her, it's amazing how her coaches are taking a step back and not owning this with her and really putting her in front of the cameras. While it might be a strategy to show that this is an innocent girl, you have to let her compete, we're also seeing that they're not accompanying her. They're not taking any of the blame. There was a reporter who yelled to Valieva, asking whether or not she is clean, like a paparazzi would ask. They weren't asking the coach about this. They were asking a young girl who did something under the direction of authorities. One Twitter user under the name Fran said despite widespread sympathy towards Valieva, she had to be banned. Kamila is absolutely a victim in this scenario. However, now that we know that she really did test positive to TMZ, they absolutely cannot let her compete, the post said. Russian athletes are already competing in Beijing as the Russian Olympic Committee without their national flag and anthem due to past sanctions for state-sponsored doping. The latest controversy blew up after a testing lab in Sweden reported on Tuesday that Valieva's sample had been positive the day after she wowed the world at the Capital Indoor Stadium. Questions hang over why there was such a delay between her test and the result, which allowed her to travel to Beijing. Russian Olympic Committee President Stanislav Pozdanyakov said Valieva's test may have been deliberately held back to coincide with the end of the team competition. I think it's a legitimate argument that many people are bringing up. The ROC said it was taking comprehensive measures to protect its athletes and to keep an honestly won gold. It said Valieva's tests were negative before and after December 25th. In an Instagram post featuring Valieva as an angel, the ROC urged fans to show their support to a very young, fragile, charming girl as she has faced the hardest test of her life. Russia's own anti-doping agency RUSADA imposed a provisional suspension on Valieva after Tuesday's result, then lifted it a day after an appeal. I just have to say, Christine Brennan called the Russian anti-doping agency an oxymoron. Have you ever heard one? Yes, Christine. On Friday, RUSADA said it was investigating her support team and attributed the delay in results to COVID-19 cases at the Swedish laboratory, TASS news agency reported. That's also a legitimate situation as well. There is also known that RUSADA can no longer test its own athletes, so the delay may have been intentional in some respects because RUSADA now cannot test its athletes. There is no way for them to cover it up. Then you further have COVID-19 cases and you think, okay, these are taking a long time, as well as transport to Sweden. Still, you have to wonder, given all that has happened in the last years, if there is perhaps a deliberate delay taking place, where if someone knew that they had the marquee athlete of the marquee coach of Russia's marquee sport, a country and federation that has routinely snubbed its nose at anti-doping authorities over the last years, if it was somehow deliberately timed. Just my opinion, we will never know for sure. With their reputations for fairness on the line, the International Olympic Committee and the World Anti-Doping Agency asked CAS to reinstate the suspension. We have a 100% policy against doping, IOC spokesman Mark Adams said. Late on Friday, CAS confirmed it had received applications from the IOC and WADA appealing RUSADA's decision to lift the suspension and said a decision will be made in due course. Valieva, wearing a navy hoodie and black tights under padded shorts, skated again in practice on Friday afternoon. The controversy over her has delayed the medal ceremony for the team event, with the United States and Japan waiting in the wings after taking silver and bronze positions. Canada finished fourth. CAS's ruling will not only determine if the ROC will be disqualified from the team event, thus losing their gold medal, but also if Valieva will be allowed to compete in the women's individual competition. Travis Tigert, head of the U.S. anti-doping agency USADA, expressed sympathy for Valieva, but said the U.S. could use new laws to prosecute those around her. This is known as the Rodchenkov Act. Clean athletes deserve better, and this poor young woman deserves better, he told Reuters. She's getting chewed up for doping on top of being abused by the Russian state system. The United States could prosecute the Russians involved in Valieva's case under the American Rodchenkov Act. It was signed into law in 2020 and empowers American prosecutors to seek fines of up to $1 million and jail terms of up to 10 years, even for non-Americans, if actions have affected American athletes' results. Very interesting. What if they were to prosecute eteri tutberidze? She might not be able to go on vacation in Miami or visit her daughter in Michigan when she's training with coach Igor Spielband. Very, very interesting. Former WADA deputy head Rod Kohler said the global bodies in charge of eradicating doping were to blame for being too lenient on Russia in the past. By not banning Russia for 4 years, there was no need or desire for cultural change by Russian authorities. I agree. WADA, IOC, and CIS favored the power and influence of Russian sport over clean sport. Well, I absolutely agree with those who are saying that Kamila Valieva needs to be banned. And before I go into other articles, I just want to take a step and really discuss why I believe that she, in fact, does need to be banned. We have to remember that this is a heart medication that's actually illegal to prescribe to minors. It's a really interesting thing to mention here. There are all sorts of conspiracy theories. I read one thing where it was ingested by accident. I read, her grandmother was sick. Maybe she was taking care of her and gave her the drug by accident. I mean, these excuses remind me of when I was playing with beads as a kid and put a bead up my nose and then tried to tell my parents that it fell in from off my dresser. I mean, it's just ridiculous gaslighting at this point. I do think that Valieva is a victim, and we have to put things into context here. Unfortunately, she is the victim and has been a victim of the state system all along. While she has also benefited from the state system as well, we've certainly seen her contracts that she has received and endorsements. You have to remember that this is her life and long term. There are effects to her health, for her mental and physical well-being, that being a part of this system does impart on these athletes. I think we can look at many of the athletes that have gone through this system, many of whom have gone through treatment, and for anorexia, for mental and physical and psychological damage that has been done to them, and really wonder if the benefits outweigh the costs. Also, it was interesting to see Ted Barton, good friend Ted, who actually came to prominence almost 20 years ago. He was a low-level person in skating who, kissed the right behinds and was able to actually get money from the ISU to be a part of changing the international judging system. Well, Ted then became a part of the Junior Grand Prix broadcast that was really lauded for bringing those to YouTube, which is certainly a benefit to the sport. But since that time, Ted became enamored with eteri tutberidze and really her stable of athletes. And being a strategic person, it appears that Ted Barton has really kissed the behinds of eteri tutberidze and looked the other way, even though the skating world speaks and witnesses things at competitions with Team Tutberidze's athletes on a regular basis. To see him tweet today about protecting this young girl was really, maddening to anyone with an ounce of intelligence, to see how Ted Barton has gone so high as to even be promoting the athletes on English-speaking YouTube feeds during Russian nationals and the Russian test skates, spewing the eteri tutberidze propaganda. But today he said, "Nicely said, Ashley." He's replying to Ashley Wagner. "It is more about how this happened to this young woman and who was involved. There needs to be independent investigation answers, and I'm sure there will be in time." Yeah, in time, after the Olympics. I'm sure. Yeah, who did give her the drugs, Ted? I would really love to know. Yes. It is interesting also, if we're going to talk about the doctor, Shevetsky, who's involved in this situation. He was the one sitting in the kiss and cry box during the Russian team event. You'll often see him with long hair at the side of the boards at competition, behind the Team Tutberidze coaching staff. Now, Yelena Vaitsekhovskaya was once asked about Ekaterina Bobrova's positive doping test. This is when she was under the care of Dr. Shevetsky at the 2016 European Figure Skating Championships. She was a student of Alexander Zhulin, who is currently the coach of Sinitsina and Katsalapov. Vaitsekhovskaya, who is a journalist and an Olympic champion herself, was asked, could a doctor confuse vials and inject an illegal drug by mistake? She says, this unfortunately is also possible. In charge of health service of the team in Bratislava was Philip Shevetsky, who constantly works with the group of Nina Mosier. Remember, Nina Mosier is the coach who allegedly is giving the athletes that blue or black liquid that is believed to have something to do with preventing delayed onset muscle soreness and lactic acid. No matter how sad it is to ascertain on the professional reputation of this specialist, there is already a quite serious stain. A year before the Olympic Games in Beijing, he worked with the national rowing team, and his actions led to the fact that 6 rowers from the Russian team were disqualified for unauthorized intravenous infusion. So let's just wait an effing second. Dr. Shevetsky was giving 6 rowers unauthorized intravenous infusions. He then is in trouble for giving Ekaterina Bobrova meldonium after it is banned. Now, everyone was warned months in advance that it was banned. She then received a suspension, and then it was overturned by the ISU, and she was then allowed to compete the next season. You have to remember that Russia has an undue influence in the ISU. The leading figure skating official in the ISU is Russian. So let's think about this. Shevetsky was responsible for 6 rowers being disqualified from an Olympics. Russia has tons of problems with doping. They're not allowed to have their flag at the Olympics. Bobrova tests positive for meldonium under his care. And we still continue to see him at all of these competitions standing at the boards. And we wonder, why is an anesthesiologist there to protect the athletes at an event? Is he the one who is going to really be helping Usacheva when she is injured? I mean, it's ridiculous at certain points. Now, there was an interesting discussion about the drug Lupron, which is something that has been alleged, believed, suspected, if you will, to be given to Russian figure skaters. It is a puberty blocker. Puberty blockers affect bone density because they affect hormones. Like, menopausal women are at risk for osteoporosis due to natural hormone decline. Add to that bone loss from anorexia and then overtraining on those bones, and it's a recipe for a lot of fractures. Well, who's believed to have had fractures this year? Anna Sherbakova over the summer. Darya Usacheva had a hip fracture. Alyona Kosternaya had her wrist, hand fracture. And then you have to wonder what kind of foot injury Alexandra Trusova actually had this season. Zagitova also talked about having broken legs. Anna Sherbakova had broken legs in the past, and you begin to see that there is a real pattern here. Yevgenia Medvedeva had a broken foot during her Olympic run, and while all athletes are susceptible to injuries, there is a persistent bone fracturing taking place at Team Tutberidze, which really makes you wonder about the collective results of all of their training methods. So just more food for thought there. On top of this, it's important to remember that NBC paid $7.75 billion to the IOC for the rights to the Olympics. They are suffering really poor ratings. There was a Bloomberg article that came out on February 10th, and it says, as the Winter Olympics near the halfway point, NBC's viewership is nearly half of what it was 4 years ago, is on pace to be the lowest in the event's history. An average of 12.3 million nightly viewers per day have watched the Winter Olympics on Comcast Corp's NBC Universal TV and streaming channels through February 8th. That compares with about 23 million viewers at the same point for the 2018 Games in Pyeongchang, South Korea, according to an NBC spokesperson. NBC is saying that they have actually more ad opportunities on Peacock, which is why you see those ads between the athlete finishing its skate and the kiss and cry during every single performance at the Olympics. And they're saying that they're making up the lost revenue because they had to lower their ad rates. But this is not good for the future of the Olympic Games. Some have begun to wonder if this is leading towards the end of the Olympic Games. And while it may not end the Olympic Games entirely, will it lose its relevancy like the Oscars have, like the Golden Globes, and many other award shows that are really slipping in public consciousness? This is a billion-dollar industry at stake, and the credibility of a billion-dollar industry at stake, as the entire world has seen that Russia is continually not being penalized for doping measures beyond a nominal flag, uniform. Russia versus the Russian Olympic Committee. People are calling out that this is not a real punishment, even though the Russians will cry hysterics every time this is put in place. We are seeing that they are not being influenced in any way to stop doping practices. So you have to wonder, where does this lead us? Yes, she is 15 years old. Yes, she is a young girl. What about the future of the Olympics? If viewers no longer believe in the Olympics, and we did see in the US that there was a huge drop-off after in figure skating after the 2002 Olympic Games, with a scandal involving the pair skaters. What does it mean for a doping scandal? A doping scandal becomes much bigger than just a vote meddling scandal, because you have to think this is going to be seen for the general public as a minor girl being given quite serious drugs. Yes, she's performing amazing feats, but what about the things they don't even know about? What if they were to learn about Anna Sherbakova, stopping at 2 shrimp per day as opposed to 3 shrimp by her coach? What if they're to learn that she's only eating liquid food at these Olympics? What if they're to learn about all of the abusive measures, about the documentaries, the Japanese documentary on eteri tutberidze that you can't even find on YouTube? What about all of the other practices that we have learned over the years? What about Polina Shelepin running away to the forest? What about how Yulia Lipnitskaya was treated and then went into treatment? There are so many persistent things that have happened. What about how Evgenia Medvedeva was vilified in the Russian press because eteri basically went on to destroy her after she went to coach Brian Orser in Canada? What about how Trusova and Kosternaya were treated by coach eteri tutberidze when they went to Blushenka? These are consistent behaviors. They are persistent. And I think that we have to wonder, what if the public keeps finding out and people keep digging? Because they're everywhere. One of the great Twitter users today pointed out that a Russian article actually linked to an interview with Eteri Tutberidze that was given on Russian TV. In that interview, Eteri talked about having found a replacement for meldonium when it was banned. So they're talking about how there was a previous drug that was performance enhancing that then became banned, so they switched to another drug. Very, very interesting behaviors that we are seeing. What the most interesting thing about the Russians in the athletes and the coaches is that as much as they say that they're not doping, they can't refrain from talking about doping in plenty of interviews. They give plenty of clues, whether it's all of the athletes going to the same doctor in Germany. Stepanova gave an interview to the Russian press about how just one injection was good enough to cure her back for a year. And that doctor that she saw in Munich administers the drug octavagan, which is controversial as well. So there are really consistent problems. Why is every Russian rhythmic gymnast, artistic gymnast, and figure skater going to the same doctor in Germany? Mind you, these are the same people that will tell us that Russia is the best and that the rest of the world is just afraid of Russia, but then suddenly their medical care isn't good enough and we have to go to just one doctor in Germany. Interesting. He specializes in everything. Medvedeva saw him, Katsalapov saw him, the Averina twins have seen him. You see Irina Wiener calling him in the documentary in 2016. Stepanova has seen him. Medvedeva went to Germany for her broken foot. These are really consistent behaviors that are not being called into question nearly enough. But there is a German news report today that actually is calling some of this into question. And this article reads, Doping case Valieva becomes a stalemate, dubious environment of the figure skater. The doping case involving figure skating prodigy Valieva will be decided by the CAS. According to Sportschau information, I really apologize, I have no knowledge of German, hundreds of suspected cases from Russian state doping are still unsolved, including in winter sports. Now it's official, figure skating prodigy Kamila Valieva is involved in a doping case after a positive test, and Russia is once again involved in a scandal. After the rumor mill had been churning for days, the international testing agency ITA, which is responsible for doping matters during the Olympics in Beijing, confirmed on Friday morning that the only 15-year-old Russian was on December 25th at the National Championships in St. Petersburg with the banned heart drug trimetazidine and was doped. And then they go on to talk about Dr. Shevetsky. Let's continue. Research by the ARD doping editorial team in the environment of the young figure skater also aroused further suspicions. A team doctor with relevant doping past works for the Russian Figure Skating Association. Before the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, Philip Shevetsky gave Russian rowers banned infusions and was initially banned for 4 years, which was later reduced by half. He had admitted the violation, allegedly meaning to protect his athletes. Shevetsky has recently accompanied Valieva's team on a regular basis. It's very true. He even posts selfies with all of the Russian figure skaters and members of Team Tutberidze on Instagram. It's a great doctor that Eteri has. It's up there with Larry Nasser for the Karolis in terms of integrity. He's also the doctor that gave Bobrova her meldonium, remember. And also, Valieva's trainer, Eteri Tutberidze, is notorious in the scene for her harsh methods. Russian sources close to the National Figure Skating Federation told Sportschau that the training camps led by Eteri Tutberidze provided athletes with pill boxes allegedly containing vitamin supplements. However, the athletes were not told exactly what medications were in the pill boxes. The process is reminiscent of customs in East German figure skating. At that time, vitamin preparations were also allegedly administered. It was later proven that these were often anabolic steroids. And while the complex and emotionally charged case of Valieva in Beijing finally becomes a stalemate, despite the first official clarifications, Team ROC and some winter sports associations came under additional pressure due to research by the ARD doping editorial team. Confidential paper from the World Anti-Doping Agency WADA from October last year, which is available to the sports, shows that more than 500 cases of suspecting doping by Russian athletes in connection with its state doping scandal and its consequences are still unresolved. So, as we can see, this is a problem that continues to get bigger and bigger and bigger, with RUSADA no longer being allowed to even administer tests to Russian athletes for doping. I do think where this is leading is that Kamila Valieva will not be allowed to compete at the Olympic Games. I do think that the Russians are going to put her front and center. I think in an ideal world, if they're going to ban her, they want to have her pulled off of a practice session with all of the world cameras watching. The athlete would then be in tears. It would be, what is the world doing to this young, vulnerable athlete? It does seem like that is where this is all heading. And it is heartbreaking for the athlete, who is a beautiful young skater. She's been compared on American TV to Olga Korbut and Nadia Comaneci in terms of her talent and in terms of her impact. Yulia Blynskaya was having a similar impact during the Sochi Olympics and really, breaking through in that way. I think it's interesting to note, though, that Olga and Nadia also were involved in abusive training practices where doping was also likely involved. It is really sad to see that this will likely end her Olympic dream, and it will likely strip the Russian team of its gold medal from the team event. I don't think that they can allow Kamila Valieva to compete, not because she is 15, but because the entire integrity of the Olympic movement is going to be called into question with its number one doping violator. So if she were from another country, you have to wonder if they could be more lenient, but it's a Russian, and Russia is already on thin ice, and it's publicly on thin ice. And this didn't happen at a world championship or European championship. This happened at the Olympics, which all of the reporters are at. All of the Christine Brennans around the world are there to report on this and to apply the pressure to the IOC and to the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Because this happened where it did, you have to wonder if WADA perhaps did withhold this test to make sure that it was revealed at the right time so that a cover-up couldn't take place. You have to imagine that WADA would be a little bit peeved with how the Russian Federation has been dealt with over the last decade in terms of their doping. I think we are all going to see in the coming days. We should know probably by Monday whether or not Kamila Valieva will be able to compete in the Olympics. It's also important to note that RUSADA initiated an investigation against Valieva's coaching staff after her positive doping test. But this is the same organization that gave Valieva an interim suspension and then removed it and overturned it hours later. So whether or not you really believe that eteri would be sanctioned or investigated, that's up to you. But we'll certainly be covering the story. Good night, and enjoy the ice dance tomorrow morning.